Do you want to know how to make the best homemade glazed donuts? Because I'm going to show you. Check this out. Hey everybody, it's Natasha of NatashasKitchen.com. Today we are making donuts. This is everyone's favorite. They disappear so fast, and it's because they are melt in your mouth delicious and easier than you think. So let's get started. If you haven't already done it, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more great recipes. In a large mixing bowl, combine 1 cup of flour, 1/4 cup of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 packet of yeast. I'm using instant yeast or quick rise, sometimes it's called rapid rise yeast. You'll need 1 packet, which is about 7 grams or 2 1/4 teaspoons. Whisk that together. Now we're gonna add our scalded and cooled milk. Scalding the milk is a quick and easy step, but will create the fluffiest donuts. I usually do this first so it can cool down while I'm prepping the other ingredients. Add 2/3 cup milk to a small saucepan and place it over medium-low heat. Stir constantly to prevent a film from forming and do not boil. Once it reaches 180 degrees Fahrenheit or you see it start to steam, take it off the heat and transfer it to a measuring cup to cool faster. The milk should still be very warm but not too hot. Make sure it's not hotter than 115 degrees Fahrenheit, otherwise you can kill or deactivate your yeast. Also add 1/4 cup of oil, 2 egg yolks, and half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And this is our homemade extract with just 2 ingredients. I will leave a link to this recipe in the notes. Whisk all of that to combine, then cover it with plastic wrap and let it rest at room temperature for about 10 minutes or until you see some bubbles form on the surface. This is how I proof the yeast to make sure it's still active. Keep in mind, if your room temperature is cold, it may take longer to see those bubbles form. Alright, we can see those little bubbles coming up to the surface of our batter. That means our yeast is working. Now add your remaining 1 1/2 cups of flour, adding just enough until the dough holds together and no longer sticks to the sides of the bowl. Whenever you're measuring flour for any baking project, it is super important that you measure correctly. Make sure you watch our video on how to measure wet and dry ingredients. If you add too much flour, the dough will be dense and dry and the donuts won't puff up correctly. Once the dough comes together, knead it by hand in the bowl for about 5 minutes. The dough should not be sticking to the sides of the bowl, and if you find it's very sticky to the touch, you can dust lightly with flour, then continue kneading with clean, dry hands. Kneading requires a little bit of effort, but it's also like adult Play-Doh, and it can be therapeutic. When you're done kneading, you'll have a soft, smooth, and slightly sticky to the touch dough. Cover the bowl tightly with plastic wrap so the dough doesn't dry out, and let it rise in a warm spot, no hotter than 110 degrees Fahrenheit, for about 45 minutes or until it's doubled in size. If your oven gets too hot for proofing, here's our microwave trick. Place a damp kitchen towel in the microwave for 1 minute. This will create a steamy and warm environment, which is perfect for proofing dough. Place your bowl into the microwave, close the door, and let it rest for 45 minutes. If you have extra time on your hands or simply have nothing better to do, you can also leave it at room temperature for about 1 1/2 to 2 hours for it to double in size. Turn your dough out onto a smooth work surface that's lightly dusted with flour. Using a rolling pin, gently roll the dough out into a large, flat disc. And this is my all-time favorite rolling pin for all of my baking projects, and I will link to this in the notes. You'll notice this rolling pin is tapered with a thicker part in the middle, so when you place your hands on the edges of the rolling pin, it creates even pressure across the surface of the dough. You want to roll the dough until it's about 1/4 to 1/3 inch thick. Cut out the donuts using a donut press and keep them as close together as you can to cut out as many as you can. I will link to the donut cutter that I have, but if you don't have one, you can also use round biscuit cutters to cut out your donuts. You should get about 11 to 12 donuts and donut holes, depending on how thick you rolled out your dough. Once all of your donuts and donut holes are cut out, transfer them to a parchment-lined baking sheet. I do like to cut out any extra donut holes that I can from the scraps that are left. You can also bunch the scraps together and re-roll them to get another donut. The donut that's re-rolled from scraps always looks a little strange and misshapen, but it sure tastes delicious. This last piece of dough is also fun to give to kids to play with if they're helping you in the kitchen. My daughter loves to roll this out and cut out her own little shapes. Now cover the donuts with a tea towel and let the donuts rise in a warm place for about 20 minutes or at room temperature for 45 minutes until you see they're visibly puffed. I preheated my oven for about 5 minutes at the lowest temperature, then turned it off. I'm also putting a wooden spoon into the door to make sure that the oven doesn't get too hot. You never want it to be above about 110 degrees Fahrenheit or you can deactivate and kill the yeast, and you wouldn't want to ruin your donuts at the end. While the donuts are proofing, we're going to set up our frying stations. You can either use a large pot or Dutch oven with a clip-on pot thermometer. And this clip-on thermometer is our most reliable and favorite one. You can also use this as an in-oven thermometer. I will link to it in the notes. If you have a deep fryer, you can also use that, and that's what we're gonna do. This makes it much easier because you don't have to constantly monitor the temperature. The deep fryer will regulate the temperature on its own. We're gonna set the oil to heat to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. I also have a baking sheet lined with a cookie rack, which is where I set the donuts after they're glazed, and I love using chopsticks for dipping the donuts into the glaze. We're gonna go ahead and make the super simple glaze right now. I got this glaze recipe from my neighbor Sherry. Thank you, Sherry, for sharing this with me. All you need is 1 pound or 4 cups of confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar with 5 to 6 tablespoons of water and 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. Whisk that together until it's smooth and you should have a light drizzling consistency. I usually start with 5 tablespoons of water and I add another one if needed. This is an easy and perfect glaze for donuts. Once you have that completely smooth, we're gonna set it next to our frying station. Now it's been about 20 minutes and we're gonna check on those donuts. The donuts look puffy and fluffy and it's time to fry. Set up your frying station in the order you're going to be working. So we're gonna have the donuts, then the fryer, then the glaze, and finally the rack where the donuts are gonna rest. Once the oil is preheated to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, we're gonna add about 2 to 3 donuts at a time, making sure you don't crowd the pan. Fry them for about 60 seconds per side or until they're golden on each side, and you only wanna flip them once. I find that using a set of chopsticks for flipping donuts makes it easy without tearing the donuts. Once it's golden brown on both sides, transfer that into the glaze. Roll the donut and turn it in the glaze to make sure that it's fully coated on both sides. Once it's fully coated, lift up the donut and let the excess glaze drip back into the bowl, then transfer it to the wire rack. This process goes fast, and as soon as you're done glazing one donut, you're ready for the next one. This is another reason why I like to fry just 2 at a time, so I can keep track of my donuts and make sure they're not overcooking. You can see that's our scrap donut, and it's misshapen, but I call this one. It is always my favorite. It's huge. Once all of the donuts are fried, I'll add the donut holes in a few batches. If the donut holes don't flip naturally, you can flip them after 60 seconds and continue frying until they're golden all over. The donut holes will take a little less time than the whole donuts. You can put whole batches of donut holes into the glaze all at once, turning them to coat, then just fish them out with a slotted spoon. Arrange the glazed donut holes on the wire rack to rest the same way. As soon as the glaze sets on the outside of the donuts, which happens fast, they're ready to serve. I'm really excited. I've been craving donuts all day, but thankfully these are pretty quick to make. I mean, so little active time, and you can have donuts in like 3 hours. Boom. These are easy, easy peasy. Make them once and you'll make them over and over because everyone will ask for them, okay? All right, I cannot wait for the taste test any longer. I'm gonna dive right in. Let's pick one that looks super puffy, super glazed. All of them. Okay, here we go. This one looks good. And just as soon as that glaze sets, you can dig in. Even if they're still a little bit warm, you want them to be a little bit warm. That's when they're the best. Fresh, homemade donuts. Nothing like it. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna stop talking. Oh. Mm. 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 Mm-hmm. Wow. I love how you can really taste that vanilla in the glaze. And they are so airy soft. I mean, they're just like a cloud and they totally melt in your mouth. They disappear really fast. If you have zero self-control, do not make this recipe because they are dangerously good. I just know when the kids get home from school, these are gonna disappear right away. And if you're lucky enough to have any leftovers, the best way to reheat them is just like 7 to 8 seconds in the microwave. It's super fast. That's the cameraman. Okay, I better wrap this up. And I need some privacy to finish these donuts. This donut, not all of them, okay. All right, I hope you guys enjoy this and that it becomes a new favorite for you, and then we'll see you in our next video. Oh. This makes my day.